Monday morning. I hope you'll take a break from your activities today, work, whatever it is that you're doing. And I hope you'll join me here for the next few minutes to have a cup of coffee and just take a break as we catch up with each other and also talk about some important things that are going to be affecting us here in the very near future. So I'm going to let Facebook and YouTube do its thing and let people know that I'm live. I'm going to share this link in a couple of places so that people will know that we're live because I love getting to invite all of my friends and my contacts and people who are um, watching live. And I hope you all can hang out for just a second. So I'm going to copy this link and let folks know that I am live. And I hope that you can't hear the yard work going on because somehow it's just appropriate that yard guys are having to work right at the time that I'm doing my live broadcast. Oh my goodness, love it when they do that. Don't you? I just love that. Well, good morning, friends. If you are here watching live, definitely pop in and say good morning so that I can say hello and chat with you for a bit. I always love catching up with my friends and seeing how you're doing, so definitely pop in and say hello. Good morning, good morning. Well, hello, Amanda from you and Edward the Lamb. I love Edward the Lamb. He is so precious. Hello, my dear. Hi, Kathy. How are you doing? Good to see you, my dear. Well, so folks, thanks for joining me here. It's really a pleasure. I'm doing some new things here live. For example, I'm going live simultaneously on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be slowly migrating my content over to YouTube. So I hope you will be following me there. Also, you can always keep in touch with what's going on here on my Facebook page. So it's good to see you here. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you are having a fabulous day so far. Good morning, Miss Sarah. How are you doing, my dear? Good to see you here. My hair looks amazing. Yeah, it's growing in a lot. I'm not sure that I really enjoy the gray showing up the way it does. Really not a fan of that. But as you can tell, my hair pattern is growing back because I have completed chemo and radiation for breast cancer. And so I'm very grateful to have my hair growing back. So thanks for that. But today, I'm going to sip and salute you with a fabulous mug. And I'm going to, I'll start it here. But it says hashtag Be Golden. This is a nonprofit organization that really promotes the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You love the gray. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, Amanda. I got to tell you, really not a fan of it. Not a fan of it mainly because it's the most wiry hair that's growing in. And unfortunately, chemo made more of my hair go gray. And of course, in this day and age where old people are not valuable and, we have really nothing to share with younger people because we're old. What do we know? So I'm not a fan of the gray, I got to tell you. And I'm really contemplating coloring it this week. But I appreciate the encouragement. I do. It's just, it makes me look like an old woman. And when you're over the age of 50, you're kind of put on the shelf. So I'd like to try to keep that secret as long as possible. But of course, now it's out and everybody knows that I'm an old woman. So yeah, so it's really growing out, and you see the gray hair is really straggly and longer than the rest of it, and it doesn't grow in or blend well with the rest of the hair. Oh, love the gold mug. Well, thank you. Good morning, Sherry. How are you doing? Yeah, today's Sip and Salute mug is from a nonprofit organization called Be Golden on treating others, right? The golden rule. And so I love this mug because I needed to feel golden on a Monday. I was sick over the weekend, had a very serious allergic reaction that I was not expecting, which kind of put me out for the entire weekend. Took me most of the weekend to recuperate. So I've discovered a new allergy. And so that was not a fun thing to go through. Um, oh, you like the mug? You like the mug? You're not on the shelf and I'm older than you. Well, that is true, Miss Mary. You are quite precious. Get me some purple overtones. Yeah, that would be awesome. Oh, hey, Bear. Hi, sweetie. Wait, are you talking about the mug or mom's hair? The mug, yes. Oh, I love it. I love this mug. So, yes, so I'm sipping and saluting you today to remind you to be golden, not gray, golden, right? Too bad these hairs aren't golden because then that would be a little better. You're 52, been coloring your hair. You know what? Good morning, Rebecca. How are you doing? Well, I was coloring my hair too. And I only had just a few little sprigs right here that were gray. And unfortunately, chemo has really, yeah, has done a number. So both. Oh, okay. Well, you'll get to see it in person here on Friday, Savannah, so you can tell me what you think after you see it. My daughter hasn't seen me um, with my hair growing back in the last time my kids saw me. Mom didn't have any hair yet. Hair hadn't grown in. I was still doing chemo and radiation. So, yeah, you'll have to tell me what you think when you see me. Well, thank you, Sherry. I'm doing better. You know, allergies are not a fun thing. When you suddenly discover that your body no longer has a tolerance for things, and it lets you know in a very serious way, it's kind of scary. So, well, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate it. Um, just I'm not dealing well with the gray. I'm just not, and I'm being honest. So, you know, thank goodness that there are things like color to put on it so that as my hair grows back out, I will feel um, attractive again. So, all of that to say, we are in day 98 of this quarantine pandemic thing. You know, 2 more days, guys, and I'm going to run out of space in this little green house that was created for me in this little template overlay. So when I reach 100, don't know what I'm going to do, but it's 98 days. It's been 98 days that my husband and I have been documenting and sort of self quarantining. We are seeing sudden spikes in certain states, cases that are ramping up, and people who are somehow not taking it seriously to wear a mask. As someone who is um, a just ending treatment cancer patient, I would really appreciate it that people would wear masks. It makes people like me who are immunocompromised feel a little bit safer about getting out in public, because right now I don't feel safe in going out in public because I know others don't tend to do unto others as they would have them do unto you, and they don't care about how what they do affects others. They want to be free to do whatever they want, even if that means compromising or jeopardizing other people who are immunocompromised. So wear a mask, be golden, and do unto others as you would want people to do unto you, right? So I sip and salute you guys this morning. If you're wearing masks when you go out in public, I appreciate you. 67 and you're not ready for the gray. You love your red. Yes, I agree. I agree, Kathy. It's tough, right? Well, folks, the reason why I am here on my page this morning is because I have been discussing a book that is on a subject that's very important to me, and one that we're going to be facing here, gosh, in just a couple of months, because there's a lot of changes that are going to be happening, and how we respond to these changes are going to affect so many people. You know, this whole pandemic situation, we've never been through something like this before in our lifetime, in our generation. And How we have responded to this pandemic so far has kind of been disastrous. There hasn't been enough PPE to go around for medical and healthcare workers. Um, States who tried to enact lockdowns and protected their people by just saying, guys, let's just hunker down for a bit. Have you ever watched sci-fi or dystopian movies when there's been a huge disease that breaks out on the earth that kills everybody on it? A lot of times in those storylines, the reason why those people get killed is because they refuse to listen and do what the medical experts are trying to tell them to do to possibly stop this contagion from spreading. And they die. And then there's always like a handful of people left on the earth to try to combat, the zombies, or you remember the movie I Am Legend, or the movie Contagion is a good one to watch in case you want to know how those things pass. And so how we respond to these things is in direct proportion to the results or the things that we're going to get on the other end. It's interesting how, when Jesus gave us the rule about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you were immunocompromised and could get deathly ill when exposed to a virus, would you want someone to take precautions so that you don't get sick? Well, of course you would. And yet somehow we can't seem to do that. It's more important to do what we want rather than to think of others. So I think it's really interesting how that has been our response to the pandemic. And I'm concerned about what the response is going to be when our children go back to school in the fall, if they're even able to go back to school in the fall. Because right now, educators and administrators and school systems are trying to figure out how they're going to go back to school, how they're going to keep the children safe, how they're going to manage classroom and standards and homework and educating the children when they can't even figure out what to do right now in general. And that's a huge problem. And yet there are parents who want to hurry up and send their kids back to school. Let's just hurry. I want to get my kids back to school. I don't want to think about all of that. I want to be able to put them on a bus and have them go away for 8 days, for 8 hours a day. Or I want to send my kids to school and I want them to be doing school. But see, the problem is that school is not going to be the same now from this point forward because it has changed and there's so many other parameters that are going to affect that. As you see it, many are self-centered and don't care. Right. And then we wonder why our children, a majority of them, come out of school self-centered and not caring. It's exactly what they see modeled to them. They feel like they are not cared for because they are pushed through a standard box with all the check marks. And the saddest thing that I've seen are about how many people are complaining about being with their children and being educated and teaching their children. Somehow that's the biggest problem. We want our children to go away. We don't want them to get in the way of what we're doing because what we're doing is so much more important. And that's tough. That's really tough. So I've been discussing some interesting concepts and ideas out of this book called Creative Schools, The Grassroots Revolution That's Transforming Education. It's written by Sir Ken Robinson, who's a PhD. He has spent most of his life studying creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship and education. And what I love in reading this book and finding out so many people who are already doing things to change education and the way their children are educated and doing it in such a way to offer more opportunities for children to thrive and to grow. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about what the industrial model of education looks like, where it came from, why we have it, and more importantly, why this model, which we've been using for decades, is not working anymore. We're seeing it in the results of test scores and standards and children falling through the cracks, no longer graduating from college, let alone high school. So you are an educator and you believe you need many changes in education. Yes, absolutely, Rebecca, because listen, how are teachers going to manage if you can't have more than 10 children in a group? How are teachers going to manage classes of 30 children if they're coming up with, I've heard of ideas such as staggering the days and having kids come in to class certain days and then do school at home certain days. What about the children whose families cannot afford a computer or a tablet or internet? Who's going to pay for that access for them so that they can stay right on the same level as other students? And what if not all students are meant to go to college, right? Well, so let's talk about this a little bit because the industrial model came about because predominantly families who lived like in the 17th and 18th century, predominantly most of those people lived in the countryside and did not live in cities. They worked the land, okay? So cities were mainly small centers of trade and commerce. So in his book, Mr. Robinson says in 16th century Europe, about 5% of the total population lived in cities. Their lives were shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the rituals of their beliefs. The rural majority lived and worked under the feudal rules of old aristocracies. They were mostly illiterate and had little education beyond learning whatever craft or trade they practiced to earn a living. Schooling was for the wealthy and those who joined the church. Well, when the Industrial Revolution happened, it changed everything. From the middle of the 18th century, a succession of technological innovations transformed traditional methods of making goods and materials, especially wool and cotton. They also led to entirely new sorts of products made from iron and steel. Industrialism generated a massive demand for energy from coal and gas, and with that demand, whole new industries arose in mining and refining raw materials. Tidal waves of people surged from the countrysides into the cities to work in factories, shipyards, and mills. Others dug underground for the coal and ores on which the factories depended. As the Industrial Revolution barreled forward in the 19th century, a new sort of society began to form. At its base was a new urban working class of men, women, and children who sold their physical labor to turn the vast machinery of industrialism. Between the working classes and the old nobility, there emerged a new middle class of people who prospered in the new economies. They included the owners and masters of industry, lawyers, doctors, and accountants, and entrepreneurs and the investors and financiers on whom they often depended. Some in the middle classes had risen from poverty through their own flair and determination. Overall, these middle classes had high aspirations for themselves and their families, and they had the money to do so. The feudal grip of the old aristocracies began to slacken, and a new political order began to take shape. So what was the purpose of this industrial movement, and what was the purpose of industrial-shaped education? Well, industrialism needed armies of manual workers for their repetitive and exhaustive labor in the mines, the factories, railways, and shipyards. It needed more skilled technical workers in engineering and all the associated trades and crafts of mining, manufacturing, and construction. It needed cohorts of clerical and administrative workers. It needed a smaller professional class of lawyers, doctors, scientists, and academics. So from the onset, mass education had strong social purposes as well. In the United States, it was intended to produce an educated citizenry for the well-being of democracy. As Thomas Jefferson put it, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, It expects what never was and never will be. Some saw mass education as a mode of social control. For many, education was a means of promoting social opportunity and equity. All of these interests are evident in the structure and the organizational principles of mass education. And I want to share with you some pictures from this time period because I want you to see what factory workers looked like. Okay, so this is a picture of some women working in a factory. You notice that there's lots of rows of desks. They're all dressed similarly, pretty much. And they're all doing the same repetitive tasks. Does that sound familiar? Here are some photos of some children in the same industrial-styled classrooms. Notice anything similar? They're all at desks. They're all doing the same thing. And believe it or not, what those children are drawing is a picture of a leaf. Does a real leaf look like that? Or are they being trained to draw a shape of a leaf? What if they were given a picture of an actual leaf? Or what if they were given a real leaf to draw? Here's another great photo that I found that was really interesting. These children look like they're having an absolute blast in school. Right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I think these children look like they're having the absolute worst time of their life. And I'm trying to see if I can get this to share a little differently. There we go. See those photos? Look at those kids. Now I'm gonna hide this one. There we go. Or we could do it this way. There we go. Don't those children look happy? Notice they're all sitting at desks in rows doing the same repetitive action. So mass education was built like a pyramid with the broad base of compulsory education for all, and then a smaller sector of secondary education, and then a narrow apex of higher education. In Germany, for example, the Hauptschule is for children who are expected to work in trades, whereas the Realschule is for white-collar jobs, such as banking, and the Gymnasium is for the students who plan to go to college. In 1944, the British government set up 3 types of secondary schooling. Selective grammar schools to prepare a minority of students for administrative and professional occupations and college. And then they have, then they have technical schools for those who are likely to take up a trade. And then secondary moderns to prepare the rest for blue-collar jobs. So what is the purpose of industrial education? Well, the purpose of industrial manufacturing, so if you think of the purpose of what were these factories, okay? So you see these women here that are working in the factory. What was their purpose? Well, the purpose of industrial manufacturing is to produce identical versions of the same products, okay? Items that don't conform are discarded. So on a factory line, when these women are working on, say they're working on machine parts, it looks like they're working on machine parts. If those parts don't conform to the pattern set forth by the factory, then those parts are discarded. Systems of mass education was designed to mold students to fit certain requirements. And because of that, not everyone makes it through the system. Some are rejected, some drop out. So industrial processes demand compliance with specific rules and standards. If you are not compliant, you are therefore non-compliant, and we will work to make that part compliant, right? So this principle is still applied to education. The standards movement is based on compliance to the curriculum. So if the students don't match up to the curriculum, well, then they're given a failing grade, or they're told they need to do more to conform to those standards. Industrial processes are linear. Raw materials are turned into products through sequential stages, each with some form of testing as then the gateway to the next level. Well, mass education was designed to fit the same kind of stages. They go from elementary school to middle school to high school to higher education. Students are typically organized into year groups and progress through the system in batches that are defined by their date of birth. There are variations in national systems, but in most of them, periodic tests determine who goes down which route and when. Industrial production is related to market demand. If it rises or falls, manufacturers adjust production in order to meet that. If there's a need for parts for the iPhone, listen, those manufacturing plants, they're going to see an uptick in production. So because industrial economies needed comparatively few administrative and professional workers, the number of students admitted to universities was tightly controlled. In our times, the demand for intellectual labor has grown, and the doors to universities have been flung open to increase the flow of graduates into the economy. As in typical factories, high schools and higher education in particular are organized around the division of labor. In high schools, the day is usually segmented into regular chunks of time, and when the bell rings, everyone changes tasks and often rooms, and they start doing something else instead. While these principles may work in manufacturing, they were never designed to work in the educational setting. You are all about learning more about this. Well, you know, it's so true, because here's the thing, Joy, you know, it is changing whether we want to accept it or not. And the way it's changing is it's going to be the amount of students who fall through the cracks in this pandemic situation. I'm curious to see the numbers of students who actually go back to school in the fall, how many they're able to recapture, and how many they're actually able to educate. So, the problem with conformity in education is that people are not standardized to begin with. He says, let me be clear, in challenging the idea of conformities in schools, I'm not advocating antisocial behavior. By conformity, I mean the institutional tendency in education to judge students by a single standard of ability and to treat those who don't meet it as less abled or disabled as deviations from the norm. In this sense, the alternative to conformity is not condoning disruption. It is celebrating diversity. Students' individual talents take many forms, and they should be fostered in similarly diverse ways. I can tell you that I have had classrooms of students, and never have I had the same dynamic in each class. Because I've had, what I used to do when I started my classrooms in school is I spent the first 3 weeks getting to know my students and having the students get to know each other. And when they figured out the dynamic in our room, not only were we able to operate well as a unit, but it even fostered some healthy competitions between my freshmen and my sophomores and my juniors and my seniors. So this is one of the core issues in promoting a culture of strict compliance in education. And we're not talking, again, he says, I'm not talking here about standards of behavioral and social conduct, but about whether and how students are encouraged to ask questions, to look for alternative and unusual answers, and to exercise their powers of creativity and imagination. Strict compliance is essential in manufacturing products, but people are different. It's not just that we come in all shapes and sizes. So when you are having struggles with your kids because they won't sit out at their desk and do their homework, have you ever wondered why? And don't tell me it's just because of teenage rebellion. Because I believe that every child has an innate sense of creativity and imagination and ability. And when we force them to do things that stifle that, they're going to resist. I know, I mean, I have that, right? Not every online course fits everybody's needs. That would be like me saying, you must take Marie Forleo's course, or you must take this person's course if you're going to be successful in your business. And the answer to that is false. It's false. So the principle of linearity works well for manufacturing. It doesn't work that way for people. Educating children by age group assumes that the most important thing they have in common is their date of manufacture. In practice, different students learn at different rates in different disciplines. I've even seen younger children run miles past older children. The principle of supply and demand does not work with people's lives either because lives are not linear. If you ask middle-aged and older people if they are doing exactly what they had in mind when they were in high school, I mean, how many of you right now can honestly say that what you determined to do for your future in high school is exactly what you're doing right now? How many people can actually say that is the way that your life has turned out? Right. You totally agree. Everyone has creativity skills, right? So industrial processes commonly overlook the value of raw materials that are not relevant to what is being made. The same is true in education. The preoccupation with particular subjects and types of ability means that students' other talents and interests are almost systematically marginalized. Inevitably, many people don't discover what they're really capable of, and their lives may be impoverished as a result. Sort of, but not exactly. Okay, well, that's true too. Listen, when I was in high school, I wanted to have my own personal column in a newspaper. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a columnist at a newspaper. Am I doing something sort of similar to that? Maybe I have my own social media channels and I'm putting out my own content on those channels, but I'm not a newspaper columnist. You know why? Because technology has changed and newspapers are no longer the common way that people get information. Now that's a sad thing because I miss long form journalism where you could open up the paper and see all the headlines that you could search for yourself. But now, even through these social media channels and platforms, everything is curated and Facebook decides what I see, right? Social media platforms decide what I see. I don't get to decide what I see. They determine which friends' content I get to see. So most industrial processes generate huge amounts of waste and low value byproducts, and so does education. As we've seen, they include dropping out, disengagement, low self-esteem, limited employment opportunities for those who don't succeed or whose talents are not valued. So if these industrial principles don't work in education, then what does? Well, we're going to be discussing that this week. We're going to be talking about some ways and some things that can be done and are currently being done in places outside of the school system that are helping children rediscover their talent. How many of you rediscovered a talent or a passion you had as an adult? You had to go through many years. Maybe you've chased a job. Maybe you've chased a certain career track only to find that that job is no longer in demand. We have a high percentage of unemployment right now. And if you were to look at the numbers of the people that are unemployed, I can tell you who they are. They're our young people because they become disillusioned. And more importantly, they become disillusioned with education because they don't see the value in getting an education because the first thing they fear is debt. So they don't want to go into debt. And they know they have a dream and a passion to chase. They just don't know how to chase it or who's there to help them. We're going to be talking about this week as we continue our discussions from this book called Creative Schools. Because I don't know about you, but I got to point this way. So this up here doesn't look like a fun workplace, and this down here certainly does not look like a fun classroom. So we're going to do things and learn about some things that's going to change the way we think, not only about education, but even our own futures. Because more importantly, our world is changing as we speak. And so how we respond to these changes is going to be in direct proportion to our level of success and how we make it to the other side. Because remember, God has told us more than once, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. That's what I want for our next generation. And I want the same for you. Because you know what? When we do unto others as we would have them do unto us, we are living the golden rule. We are living the principles that we were given to be successful in life. So guys, that's my little take on this Monday. Listen, we know what we're facing. We know we've got problems to tackle, but we can tackle them one at a time and together to make things different, not only for ourselves, but for the next generation. So guys, get out there today, be golden, love each other, have a fantastic Monday, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. as we continue our conversation on creative schools. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you. And I hope to see you tomorrow morning